and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, the lawgiver himself, it's Mr. Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
Podcaster shall not kill podcaster.
Okay, but what if podcaster kills podcaster's son?
I get to kill you and throw you off the branch.
Okay. Technically, he just kind of falls, so... Loophole!
Yeah, they didn't really have the courage of their convictions with that ending, I guess. We'll get there, though.
Yeah. This week on the show, our series Deconstructing the Planet of the Apes franchise continues with the fifth film in the series, 1973's Battle for the Planet of the Apes. The final film in the first what is a five version of a trilogy, Matt?
Pentology?
Pentology. This is the last movie they will make in the 20th century. We don't come back to the Ape franchise until 2001 with Tim Burton's reboot that is incredibly successful. And it's the culmination of everything we've been watching up until this point. So I'm excited to chat with you about it.
Me too.
And then summer is coming to an end. It is Labor Day weekend this weekend. So we will be discussing the summer box office. We'll be taking a look at how movies did this summer and what it says about the state of the industry. We like to do this every so often because it's just fun to talk money and how money represents taste.
That's right. I enjoy these. Yeah.
All right, Matt, let's get right into it and talk about Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Matt, what is this movie all about?
10 years after a worldwide series of ape revolutions and a brutal nuclear war among humans, Caesar must protect survivors of both species from an insidious human cult and a militant ape faction alike.
This movie was written by John and Joyce Corrington. It was directed by J. Lee Thompson, and it stars once again for his fourth appearance in the series, Roddy McDowall, once again playing Caesar, and Claude Atkins, who is playing Aldo, our evil gorilla ape. Matt, what did you think of Battle for the Planet of the Apes?
It's not too bad. I think we're probably on the same page here that last week's movie was probably the worst so far, whereas this one is it's more in line with like the second movie quality wise, where probably script wise it's saying some things. It's got some interesting moments. It's campy as hell, obviously, because I mean this is Planet of the Apes we're talking about. But I found it quite watchable and enjoyable, and I didn't know the story of this one like at all. So this is the one where I was the most, I think, unsure of what I was getting into. So that was interesting experience wise for me. How about you?
Au contraire, you did know the story of this one, because the story of this one is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
That's true.
Sort of. I mean, this is the one that I hadn't seen. So with your conversation about Rise of the Planet of the Apes being so similar to Conquest, I had this movie in my mind, which is kind of, I think, thematically trying to do a similar thing of like, can ape kind and mankind exist in peace, and the character of Caesar being like this character kind of caught in the middle between these warring factions on both sides, trying to maintain peace, trying to keep everyone happy and together and prosperous, and trying to, in the case of this movie, change the future. I really liked this movie, actually. I thought this was pretty good, and it's bad in all the ways that these movies have been bad, but I agree with you. I think this movie is talking about and discussing interesting things in a way that I think feels much more engaging and thought-provoking than the last movie did. I think, if I had to rank these five, I think I would probably still put Escape second after the original, because that's just fun and delightful. But this one's definitely up there. I was worried coming from Conquest into this one that this one is just gonna be that but worse, because like this is a series that they pump movies out nonstop since '68, and then they're done and they leave. So I was like, oh, this must have been really bad then. And it's really not.
Yeah, I agree. I thought there were some fun ideas, like some fun. Again, I think Planet of the Apes as a franchise is at its best when it's sort of there's just a little setting for a bunch of interesting sci-fi notions that are all thematically interconnected. And one of the bits that I liked was like the very beginning of the movie where you've got the human who's teaching the apes, and the apes have clearly gotten a lot smarter since the last movie because they can all talk. They can't all talk perfectly, but they can all talk somewhat. And yet it's clear that the humans, despite still knowing more information and being a bit more intelligent at this point, the humans are the second class citizens,
Hmm.
which is an inversion of how things were before. And the humans aren't super happy with their position in the society, but neither are they immediately wanting to rebel. There's just kind of there's some tension there though.
Yeah.
And the idea that the guy says no, he says no to the ape.
Oh, I
And
loved that. I loved that
yeah,
was so cool.
I thought that was great. That was like the genuinely good moment. He says no, and all the apes freak out because that's the one taboo, is humans are not allowed to say no to the apes, because that was the word that they were conditioned to fear in their slavery. Or and I was like, yeah, sure, okay, cool. And then he
Wh-
like becomes a pariah. Um,
yeah. Which by the way, like it's a moment that I really love, but it was, I think, a very instructive moment of the the great things and the frustrating things about this movie and the series, because I think that moment itself works, but then the exposition dialogue to explain why that was a thing was terrible.
yeah,
Like, especially since they're very clearly explaining this to a teacher that would definitely know that already, right?
yeah,
Like teacher would definitely know exactly why you can't say no to an ape. Like, out of any human living there, he would know it. And they didn't even like try to mask or hide why. Like, there wasn't even like a this
uh-huh.
after the expository dialogue. It was just laid it. And I'm like, come on, you guys have to come up with a more inventive way of conveying that information. And that's, I think, ultimately like my big flaw with this film is not the ideas of it, but some of the execution is a little just a little clunky. Like, there's a lot of bad acting in this movie, like a lot. Fortunately, not from any of the main characters, but like any side character, like the line readings are just horrendous.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's like I'm loving the ideas, so that's how I felt with this movie.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Although I will say, at the time while I was watching it, I just kind of saw it as like campy 70s stuff and wasn't thinking like, oh, this is terrible acting. I guess in contrast to Roddy McDowell, who's just consistently great in all the movies. Yeah, everybody's bad. I actually like the leader of the mutant human tribe, who I
Hmm.
guess are the precursors of the mutants who we encounter in Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I believe
Um,
that guy is named, what was his name? Culp, which is who was apparently a character in the fourth one. I didn't recognize him, but
I didn't recognize him either. That's interesting. Huh. Now I'm trying to think. Maybe he did look kind of familiar now that I think about it. But anyway, I liked his performance as being a sort of um I just thought he was a really interesting take on that kind of villain, where it there was something disturbingly relatable. I guess I don't know quite how to say it exactly. It's like he wasn't like a cacklingly evil villain, nor was he like a sympathetic and understandable villain. Like they didn't go for the angle of like, yeah, he's just trying to protect his people. Like, no, he was clearly broken in the head
yeah,
and a horrible person. But he didn't play it as like, oh, this guy's just a this he's just a movie monster. I don't know. I'm not communicating this very clearly. I just found his performance to be a fun twist on the evil genocidal maniac villain.
yeah. No, I like him a lot too, and I mean, like, between him and Aldo, like I think this is a really interesting thing that this movie is doing, and part of the reason I like it so much is it's basically asking the central question of like, how does one maintain a peaceful society when people like these two people are almost an inevitability in it? Like that there's gonna be people who are perhaps not like Machiavellian levels of evil, but are just kind of warhawks, and they
Yeah.
just like want to fight. And like, how do you do that? Like the concept of ape shall not kill ape is like it's really noble, and I love it. But like the question is, okay, but like how do you do that it like how do you maintain that in a society where one person decides, no, I'm going to break this rule?
Yeah.
There's so many moments in this movie that I thought were just like really fascinating, in that like Aldo was like giving his speech to the gorillas about like, oh, we're gonna take the guns, and we're gonna take down the bad guys, we're the humans, we're gonna kill all the humans, and then we'll also kill Caesar. And then like every other gorilla is like, uh
Uh-huh.
hold up a minute. Wait, that's not what we signed up for. And then of course that's right when the Cornelius is there to witness it and ends up being killed. But
Yeah.
like that's just this really fascinating kind of viewpoint on like how does a leader, a peaceful benevolent leader that they're building Caesar to be, which doesn't match the person he is at the end of the last movie, but whatever.
Uh-huh.
um like how does he maintain both control and maintain peace in a world that is inevitably heading towards its own destruction, right? Like I think the future rears its head in this movie in a way that hasn't probably since Escape, where the inevitability of the destruction of Earth is like the main conflict that our main character is trying to stop. And I guess, I don't know, successfully does, right? Like that's how I read the ending,
Hmm.
that like there's it's ape the ending is the lawgiver reading to people about, and then there's apes and children living in harmony, right? So like the future as we saw it in Planet of the Apes has been successfully changed. Was my interpretation. I don't know what you think.
Uh, phew, geez, you've blown my mind here. I mean, that wasn't what I thought, but now that you say that, it immediately makes total sense and is in fact like the way you probably want to end this franchise. Like, especially if they
Yeah,
knew this
yeah.
was the last movie, is like, yeah, we got to give him some sense of hope. It would be utterly demoralizing to say, yeah, we did this whole 5 movie series and it was all just a time loop about how we're doomed to destroy ourselves. I mean, not that like that would be totally in keeping with the thematic thrust of all these movies, is that yeah, we're
Mhm.
doomed. It's all a cycle. We're all doomed. By our nature. But
Yeah.
one of the things about art is it allows us to reach for something aspirational, and we can aspire to have ape and human child playing hand in hand. I
Mhm.
feel like that would have been sold a little bit better if they had shown it, but it makes me wonder if maybe that coda was like filmed later to try to you know give things some
Yeah.
resolution. um
Because yeah, the end of the actual like in time section is like, can mankind and ape kind exist together? And the movie's basically like, only the future will know that.
uh-huh.
It's like, okay, but and then essentially they cut to a future that does show that. So
Yeah.
um
Huh. Okay, yeah, I'm
yeah.
open to this idea. I kind of didn't think that, and I don't know that I'm like 100% sold, but as soon as you said it, I immediately was like, oh, that makes more sense than just like, because I think I was thinking that was some indeterminate point in the future, maybe 1,000 years later.
So
Um,
they say the date, it's 26 something. So
okay.
it's not, we're still a good 1400 years away from when Planet of the Apes takes place. So yes, I
Hmm.
will I will cop to the fact that there is sufficient time for this whole harmony to collapse and it to return to exactly what it's like in Planet of the Apes. But I feel like this was the cut intentionally to human children and ape children sitting together learning about their past, um, to me
Yeah.
was supposed to demonstrate that the future has been changed.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. it does make me wonder, like, what changed it because
Yeah, like that. No, that was my follow up. It's like why,
yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah,
because the way we end the movie, like, there's interesting stuff in there that could be related to it because it's like ape shall never kill ape up until the end of the movie is just true. Like
yeah.
it's not like the 10 commandments where it's like thou shalt not kill and it's like yeah, but we all know that people kill each other all the time. It's thou shalt not kill is aspirational, not true. But in the world of this movie, no ape has ever committed murder, and there's actually something like biblical and really
Yeah.
interesting and like mythic about the things that happen in this story because it's like you're first of all you're aware that you're watching basically the events that the religion of the apes in the future are entirely rooted in
Hmm.
and this is the moment when ape shall not kill ape goes from being a true statement which at least the apes can tell themselves reflects the purity and superiority of the apes are just not like people because people kill each other, people wipe themselves out, but apes just aren't like that, they're not violent, we're better than the humans. And then and then Aldo, the gorillas sort of accidentally kill Cornelius,
Hmm.
unclear. And then
I think Aldo kills him. I mean, like maybe he didn't think he would die, but chop a branch
yeah,
that a kid's sitting on. What do you think's gonna happen?
yeah, and it's like what were they going to do with him once they got him? Yeah, so yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's all fair. And then I guess you said a minute ago it's a little bit ambiguous whether Cornelius outright kills Aldo. I guess it's interesting there's a mirroring there. I didn't quite consciously notice that, but they
Yeah,
both
it's both up in trees. Yeah, yeah,
both
yeah,
up in trees, falling down out of trees, which is kind of a fall from grace metaphor, but also like they're apes. Not
yeah.
that not that apes live in trees, but you know,
But we go monkey tree, and
but
that's what I mean.
yeah,
This movie did not spend a fraction of a second doing any research into any true facts about chimpanzees, gorillas, or orangutans at
yeah.
all. So
I want to talk about the orangutans at some point, by the way, but
sure, sure.
before that, just want to like round this idea out that the movie ends with the idea that the apes realize like, oh, actually, maybe we're no better than the humans, and
Hmm.
maybe that's what allows there to be peace because it's like, okay, look, y'all suck, but maybe we suck too, and we're both going to have to try, and we can't just look down on you as the ones who are flawed if we're also flawed in this way. And that's kind of the basis for some kind of brotherhood where we're both struggling against our flawed nature together instead of
Hmm.
us just condemning you as the flawed humans.
Yeah,
Um, that I liked all that. None of that was even said explicitly. That was just mostly subtext. Well, maybe some of
yeah.
it was said. I liked it though.
It was less textual than like the themes of the last movie for
Yeah.
sure. Like it was definitely you have to put your thinking cap on a little bit for this movie. And I love the conflicts we set up there. Like the Aldo kills Cornelius part, I think, is when I really started thinking, oh, this movie's working on me because like it feels like we're gonna do this very traditional, like, oh, Caesar's gonna think it was the humans who killed his kid. They didn't actually do that. I guess maybe he did for like a fraction of a second, but um, they didn't actually do that very much. But just this idea of like, you know, this warmongering groups of humans come, and it has this chance of really crystallizing ape society's final point of view on humans, that like, oh, this is what humans are, they're all bad, and what we need to do for the good of our species is just to get rid of them. Basically Aldo's plan. But Cornelius is able to see the truth of it through, like, it is ironic that Aldo's killing of the first murder, the Cain and Abel murder of ape society, is perhaps the thing that crystallized, like you're saying, this better attitude towards humanity. Like, I think it's the one guy's line that says, "What are they doing?" And he's like, "Oh, becoming human." Right? Like, I thought that was a really really great line.
Yeah.
Or maybe realizing that they're human or something, like, I forget exactly what it was, but just like all really interesting effective stuff, and just so much more. so much more layered and interesting to me than just this is slavery, which was the last movie.
Yeah, I agree. I've already had more fun talking about this movie in the short time we've been talking about it than I did about the last one. So
Yeah.
I guess we can jump all around, but I thought the way the orangutans were portrayed in this movie was just kind of fun. Where
So, by the way, that's Paul Williams as Virgil. I don't know if you knew
okay,
that. This the singer
no,
songwriter Paul Williams
did
is
not
just playing an orangutan. Sure, whatever.
did not know
Um,
that. No,
but he's wonderful. I love him.
yeah, I love all of them. That's the funny thing. Like the orangutans in the future, timeline, 2,000 years from now or whatever, all seem stuck up and pretentious.
Hmm.
And they're clearly in the position of power, that they're the high caste, as I think you said before.
Yeah,
But in this one, it's not that way. Like there's a lot more sort of equality, but they're clearly like the Athenian philosopher group who just
yeah,
likes to talk about logic. And it's funny now that I think about it, they literally in the beginning of the movie they were talking about like a grandfather paradox scenario, weren't they?
yeah,
So
yeah.
which makes you, which I think maybe lends some credence to your theory that maybe the time loop was broken. But anyway,
It is interesting that like in the first movie, yeah, like in the caste society of the apes, chimpanzees were the scientists, gorillas were the uh, war, physical hunters, and orangutans were the leadership caste. And it seems like in this version of the story, by movie 5, we've kind of flipped the chimps and the orangutans a little
yeah,
bit. Like it feels like the orangutans are meant to be like I think you're right, like the philosophizers, but also the scientists, and the chimps seem to just kind of be the default or the leadership caste.
yeah,
And then the gorillas get to stay the same because man, fuck those gorillas. I think that's the lesson here is fuck the gorillas.
yeah. This movie really soured me on gorillas. I'm see them in a whole different light now. Didn't realize they were so warlike and just horrible, really.
Yeah, horrible
Um,
gorillas, yeah.
I kind of like
Don't
the
even wanna learn
idea.
how to read, those
Y-
damn gorillas.
Yeah, and you know, they like guns. I
They
didn't
just
know that
love
about
guns.
gorillas. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
I do we talked so much in the last movie about how the action sequences just didn't work at all, and it's not like the action sequences are particularly good in this one, but I really did love the fight like apes moment. I thought that was pretty cool. Um, I think like that dodge would have been very easily discovered when you're like checking the corpses of all these apes that you didn't shoot, and they're like, "Huh, none of these bodies have bullet holes in them."
yeah,
But still, it was fun. It was fun.
I agree actually. So I actually didn't love the battle itself. I was kind of like, yeah, this is, whatever. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
But
It's a
but
lot of
that
it's a lot of shooting at nothing and nobody getting hit.
right. I guess the only part of it that I kind of liked was the sort of dollar store Mad Max aesthetic to things where
Mhm. Mhm.
where like no one really has the right equipment, and like there's a school bus, I believe, that they're using for troop transport. So like that was kind of cool. Like they at least tried to make it seem like this is a post apocalyptic attack,
Yeah.
attack force.
Yeah, Mad Max came out 6 years after this, so they clearly
Oh
ripped
wow,
all this from this movie.
yeah, you're totally right. Wow, I didn't realize. No, so I did like that, but then yeah, I think my favorite part, the part where I kind of did a 180 and actually was like, oh, okay, that was actually worth it, was what you just said, when all the apes stand up and ambush the humans, and it's great.
Well, and it is great, and it goes into I think a lot of the themes of the movie is this idea that like when you see an ape standing there in a line holding a automatic rifle and firing it at people, it's just like, oh, you're just becoming humans. Like that's
Yeah,
what's happening. And so the fight like apes moment is like, no, this is how we win by differentiating ourselves, by being different, by showing that we're different from those that came before us, and perhaps reaching a new successful path that has not been able to be reached before. And I don't know, I liked that. I like the whole thing. Like, there's so many moments in this movie where I'm just like, oh, I like that we're taking the time to explore this. Like when Caesar first comes back from the ruins of the city and is talking about the mutants, and how they're mad, and Lisa's like, well, how do you know that? did you
Uh-huh.
did you talk to him? He's like, no, but they're ugly. And it's
Uh-huh.
just like, it's like, oh my god, the movie's being smart and clever here. Actually, it's like, this is what we do. This is how we other people. It's like he's just made a decision about who these people are. And I mean, in this instance, the decision turns out to be correct, but that's only because essentially there's one man like leading them. Like, we get to see within the mutant camp that there's a person that's clearly like, nah, this isn't the right way. This is not the way to go. And it's like every faction has people in it that are like, and then leaders who are pushing them towards it. So
Yeah.
I like all that stuff's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and it generally makes sense that the leaders get into those positions because they're the ones who are willing to push people aside and take that leadership, even though they have
Yeah.
not the best ideas. I think the movies are fairly consistent in that approach to like
Yeah.
the perils of having leaders, right? It,
Hmm.
there's interesting there's a lot of interesting connections or parallels maybe between this movie and Beneath the Planet of the Apes, where
Yeah.
that movie ends with the the gorillas specifically invading the Forbidden Zone and invading the city of the mutants, going underground, and that leading to the destruction of the Earth. Whereas this movie is kind of the opposite, I guess, where the
Hmm.
humans from the underground city invade uh, the community of the apes, and it's, I mean, the gorillas are the ones who beat them. Actually, well, sort of. The gorillas are the ones who murder them. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of trying to like sketch out all the connections here. It feels intentional though. It feels like there was a an attempt to mirror those two narrative ideas.
Yeah. No, there is, and I like. I mean, I don't know if this movie, like when they were writing it, was like, yes, this is going to be the last one, but it definitely feels that way, right? Like, not just by the end sequence we talked about, but I think it is seemingly a movie that is trying to take all four movies before it and tie them together in a way by doing these playing off these beats. It is a direct sequel to Conquest, but it is also playing off of beats and ideas that every single one of these movies has set up. Um, I think one thing about this movie, Matt, is it's absurdly short.
Uh-huh.
This movie's so short. So just so we're clear here, this movie is 85 minutes long,
Uh-huh.
and the first 5 minutes of it is a recap of the previous movie,
Yeah.
previous two movies. And I mean, as founding member and co-president of 90 Minute Studios, like, I'm for this, but it's kind of crazy how short this movie is.
Yeah, that is really funny. I remember when the movie started and we were doing all the recaps, I was like, "Oh man, we are really trying to cut costs here, aren't we?" Um, I mean, if anything, considering how low the budget was, I'm surprised we had this big battle with all the military hardware, and the prosthetics
Yeah.
actually looked better in this movie than they have for a minute. I can't remember from movie to movie what I felt about all the prosthetics, but um,
They vary. I mostly agree with you. I feel like for whatever reason the gorilla prosthetic just really bugs me.
yeah,
I don't know what it is about it, but just like the way they've done the snout on the gorilla prosthetic, it never seems like they're actually talking. It feels like it's a mask to me. And there, I
yeah.
mean, part of that is there's several moments in there where you can like definitely tell some awkward edits were done to edit in some ADR dialogue, but um I think the gorilla, like, Aldo looks the least successful of all the main characters to me. Like, I think the orangutans look pretty good. I think the chimpanzees look pretty good, but Aldo, like, he looks like a dude.
Yeah, that's true. I just agree with that. I think the hero character in this case Caesar again. Always looks good. I think that's generally true across all the movies. Is like as long as you're focusing on Cornelius Zira and
Hmm.
Caesar and Zaius, then it's like quite high quality. But then there's a lot of variation around the edges, movie to movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of like the gorillas, I think like the scout gorilla that gets blown up by the mutants and
Uh-huh.
then comes back and reports, like his line reading, I'm like, was this not an actor? It's like legitimately terrible, terrible
Uh-huh.
line reading. I mean, look, like I think we have a lot of interesting things to say about this movie. I do not know if I would go so far as to call this a good movie.
Yeah.
um, it's it's got a lot of shagginess. There's a lot of weird moments where you're just like, oh, this, like for example, they talk so long about how ugly and gross and mutated the mutants are, and it's like that was in the script and they filmed that scene, and then when they got to the mutants, they were like, oh, we don't have the budget to do that
Uh-huh.
because they just look like people. Like, I mean, maybe I missed something, but I don't see any mutations on them. Do you?
I mean, there's a few moments where specific characters will have like a lesion. Like
Yeah.
like the first thing I think of there is one of the first shots we see of the mutants is like this woman staring at her face in the mirror, and she's got like you know, what looks like a cancerous lesion on her face. And she's kind of like touching it and having an expression of being disturbed on her face, which I
Sure.
felt I felt was just foreshadowing, the idea that in the future all these people are going to be totally mutated and they're going to have those rubber masks, but we're not there yet. I thought that was just what we were kind of doing there with that moment. Um, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's radiation poisoning. That's not. I don't know. That's like not what I think of when I think of mutant. I guess. Um,
Right. Yeah. Well, so okay.
Especially the way they describe them as hideous, and it's like, okay, it's mean.
Yeah, they were just in very dirty clothes. This is what they were.
Yeah, and they're
Um,
wearing like caps, like
like
weird
it's
caps
just
on their head.
it's just funny because there's not enough time really for them to be mutants
Yeah.
because it's been like 10 years since the nuclear war at
This is the I
most.
mean, yeah, this is the problem with the whole movie is there's not enough time for any of the like this has been the through line
Uh huh.
in all of these movies is there's just not enough time for any of this to happen.
Yeah.
Like the idea that it has been I think it's interesting that summary you read said it was 10 years. I'm pretty sure they say it was 12 years from the nuclear war, which if we're like being generous, let's say the nuclear war happens like 5 years after the events of um the last movie. So it's been less than 2 decades and all apes talk now. They all wear clothes. Like
Yeah. Not
come on,
only
come on.
not only do they wear clothes, but they wear exactly the same outfits that they'll be wearing 2,000 years later.
Dude,
Um,
that is the staying power of that style,
yeah.
man. It just nothing's happening for 2,000 years.
Also, it caused me to realize that most of them are wearing leather, where I thought they were like a vegetarian society.
Yeah,
We-
like they were specifically disgusted by like one of my favorite lines this just reminded me of is when what was his name? McDonald, who is not the same McDonald from the last movie. I
Really,
guess this is a clever yeah, I don't know if you missed that part. This is a
this is
clever
uh huh,
rewrite of like this is McDonald's brother.
uh huh,
Because I guess they couldn't get the same actor back and they just didn't want to like recast the role. So they just made it his brother, but he's serving the exact same purpose. But like my favorite line is when he's talking about like he's like, yeah, which really would love to eat a whole chicken or something. And then I forget what the exact line is, but it's like, and now all we eat are nuts. And he's just like so annoyed about it
yeah,
and sad and miserable.
yeah. I like. It's funny. I liked his character. I did notice that he was McDonald's brother, and that's one of those moments where I'm just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah,
Sure, yeah, yeah. You just gotta shrug past that. I
yeah,
just laughed at it. Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
liked him so much better in this movie than I did in the last movie, where I really felt like the last movie was just like, he's black, let's make him a stand-in for slavery.
Uh-huh.
In this movie, he actually had something to do besides just admonish Caesar. Like
Yeah.
he had a function in the movie, and I really liked his role here.
Yeah. So I learned that the same guy wrote all the Planet of the Apes scripts, but for this one there was like a conflict where like he wrote a script and then he was sick and couldn't finish it, so a couple
Yeah.
of other writers came on and they finished it, and then allegedly he came back and then made some more edits, but it turns out that like in the end the script credit went to um didn't go to him at all. So sorry, his name is Paul Den.
Yeah.
He and then but the screenplay credit for this movie goes to John and Joyce Corrington.
Hmm. Yeah.
But but like it's obvious that Paul Den had his fingers all over it because like he does have a story credit. It's just
Yeah.
it feels like the kind of story he would tell. I bring this up specifically because this dialogue did feel quite a bit different from certainly the last movie and really
Yeah. It did.
because I felt like as the Ape series has gone on for the first four anyway, it got a lot more like speechifying and long-winded. Just saying the themes and saying the message of the story at the camera type screenwriting. I think the first movie was great. By the way, I think the first movie was very tightly written, minimal long boring speeches in the first movie, but it just got worse and worse with each movie. And then this movie was off of that trend where it kind of goes back to having often fairly realistic dialogue between characters, things that people might actually say with
Yeah.
only a couple moments of overt uh, uh, telling you what to think happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's the final speech between. It's not really a speech. The dialogue between McDonald and Caesar of like is like, he lets them out of the cage, and McDonald's like, hey, um, if we're not grateful, I got to pull it up. If we appear to be lacking in gratitude, Caesar, what have we to be grateful for? If you mean to set us free, then free us completely. Like that is the closest we get to speechifying in this movie. But
Yeah.
I think that dialogue works so much better than where there is fire, there is smoke, and where there is smoke, we will be huddled. And
Uh-huh.
we like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
totally works better.
Yeah. Yeah. Just overall, I think that's one of the things that made this movie better than, like you said, maybe number three, kind of middle of the pack behind the first one and then the second one for me.
Hmm. I do think like the ultimate struggle I have with this is back to your same question of like, so why did things change this time, right?
Mhm.
Because like I look for specific character choices and moments in the movie that might be depicting how we're going to do things differently, and like Caesar choosing to kill Aldo
Uh-huh.
doesn't seem like that would have a fundamental change in things.
Yeah.
There's that whole dialogue between the ape in charge of the armory, Mandemus, who is like, "Hey, I've been looking over this armory for 30 years. Please give me one favor. Let's destroy it." And Caesar's basically just like, "No."
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be indicative of like a change. So I that's what I struggle with is like, what is the moment, what is the single, if there is, moment of now we're going to do things a little bit differently.
Yeah. I don't think that was in the movie. Like, I think that would be how I would do it if my intent was to say, no, no, we're going to break the curse. Would be you have one moment of choice um, where it's obvious, make it more obvious that a different choice was made the first time. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I think now that I've sort of processed the idea that the ending implies that human and ape live side by side, I'm less confident that that's meant to just be taken as definitely the case. I think
Sure.
we're meant to have
Fair.
hope. Like I think the movie does explicitly end on a note of hope, where maybe things could still be good, and maybe these two, these four rather peoples could get along. But it's I think the idea maybe is like, well, it's always going to take work, and there's always going to be frictions, and there is no panacea. Like there's no moment, there's nothing, there's no highly dramatic story moment that can happen that can just totally and permanently resolve these, what are fundamentally racial tensions. So you just have to hope that people will day after day make the right choice, um, which which is exactly the situation we find ourselves in on our own actual world, right? So that's
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, that's fair. I think maybe that ends up being a slightly more complicated ending than just let's give us a pat, like
mhm.
this is the correct choice that leads towards salvation moment, because that's not really how any of this actually works. No, I like that.
Yeah,
Um
cool.
what'd you think of Lisa? Lisa the like I can't get over the fact that it's been like a dozen years and this was textually just a chimpanzee 10
Uh-huh.
years ago, and now she's like wise, this that like the wise, leader behind
Uh-huh.
the leader, like trying to help him make the correct choices. And it just I it's so off-putting to me. And like Lisa's, I don't even know the name of her, but her like servant, her human servant.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't know, like it's been like it's been like 10 years.
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Yeah. 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 I it doesn't make any sense. Like it doesn't make any sense at all. There's not even a way that you can squint and be like, well, what about, because like just gorillas are like hundreds of pounds, and they're giant, and their bodies look totally weird and different. I'm talking about in real life. Like a gorilla is more like a you know, I mean, it's still an ape, obviously, but a gorilla
Mhm.
looks nothing like a person
Yeah.
at all. Like it's a totally different body plan. They're quadrupedal.
Yeah.
Like so the idea that it's just these are gorillas, they can talk now. It's like no, no. Um
I mean, one thing I was thinking about with this is like a lot of the research on gorillas and chimpanzees, like Jane Goodall, Diane Fossey, that stuff was happening like right now in the world
uh
of when these movies were coming out. Like it was literally happening like late 60s, early 70s type stuff. So like it might not even be a matter of we just ignored and didn't bother to look up anything about chimpanzees and gorillas, and more just, hey, we didn't really know that much yet. Like we were still learning about these animals and their behavior and these things, which is a fun thing to think about because it feels like this is just stuff we've known about these animals forever. But really, it was these scientists like really spending some time learning their behavior, getting to understand how these animals work. And it
that's
wasn't
true.
that long ago.
That's true. Yeah, I think what I said in the Discord the other day was that these movies work better the less you know about apes, or chimpanzees specifically, because I think maybe back when these movies were coming out, you could just pretend that maybe chimps are really these peaceful, peace loving creatures when actually they're awful. They're
Hmm.
monsters. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that's fine. And the the sort of joke I have in my own mind is just like, this is not Earth. Actually, this is a different planet where apes are just different than they are on Earth.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think the easiest thing to do is just say that ape doesn't mean like an ape as we
uh
mean it in our language. It's just like these aren't chimpanzees or orangutans or gorillas. These are just a mutated species of whatever that is a stand-in for examining human culture and
right,
society, and that's fine.
right, right. Like again, I mean, you could imagine a science fiction story where it's actually about like some other planet, and there's just four intelligent species on that planet, and they interact and they have tensions amongst themselves, and one of them doesn't have to be a human for you to make a lot of the same points, but due to the fact that they had to make a movie and they had to sell that movie, or rather, I guess the book came first. It was just like, well, you start from the idea of monkeys, just have it be monkeys, and then monkeys evolve, and then you get trapped into making a film franchise about it, and you have to honor that continuity now, and so you're just, I don't
Mhm.
know, it's all fine. It's funny, I didn't realize until now. I was just kind of thinking about um what's the Adrian Tchaikovsky books about the spiders,
Oh yeah.
and how like the first plan was actually to drop monkeys on the planet and then cause the monkeys to be hyper evolved, as a sort of mad science project. But then the premise of the whole book, not a spoiler because it's the whole book, is that instead the spiders become hyper evolved, and so you have the conflict um, between these intelligent species, but there's clearly the germ of the idea of Planet of the Apes in that. Um,
Hmm.
I think that feels to me like a direct sort of homage to Planet of the Apes, that they were gonna evolve the monkeys.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I think you're definitely right.
cool.
Um, man, so one thing that's really interesting about this movie, and I think perhaps the way we can wrap up this conversation is the critics like demolished this one. Um, which I mean, I'm not saying is undeserved, but it surprises me like how many of them are just like this is clearly the worst one.
Uh-huh.
Um, which I just can't agree with at all. Um, like Roger Ebert says it looks to be the last gasp of a dying series, a movie made simply to wring dollars out of any remaining ape fans. And like, I mean, I get it from like a metatextual perspective. Is like, yes, they like pumped this movie out like a year after the last one came out, which is what they've been doing from the beginning. It's less than 90 minutes long. They're like just get something out there. But like I think the thing about this movie and the thing about this series overall that I really like is I do think they're always like reaching for some sort of idea and concept and thing that they want to discuss. Like another review here says bereft of bright ideas and visually shabby. Like I agree with the latter point, but like I don't think it's bereft of bright ideas. Like perhaps it's a little clumsy in the execution of some of these bright ideas, but this is a movie and a series that's like just like trying to just like figure out what is the nature of humanity. And perhaps like in the 70s, like they were just doing smarter movies in general. So something like this was like, it's pretty pedestrian compared to the incredibly intelligent movies we're seeing all the time. But like to me in 2024, I'm like, this is, I would never say bereft of bright ideas about this movie.
That's interesting. I wonder if this was, an early instance of the critical commentariat turning against something because it was like too popular, and
I mean, yeah, probably.
I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. It's I think saying this is the worst of the five is totally ridiculous, but I also don't think it's a good movie. So
It does have to be like just imagine what it was like to live and you're like, really? We're doing another one?
right, right, right. I can. As soon as you started talking about this, about the critics, I was just thinking like, this so reminds me of, Marvel, and how for like 15 years it's been like, oh, are we finally getting Marvel fatigue? Is Marvel fatigue finally setting in? Um, and like also, I do wonder separate thought here, like as you move from the 60s into the 70s, I'm no historian of this period, but I do wonder if there wasn't more of a cultural shift toward like being a little bit snooty, and like because I feel like the 60s were like a time of openness and experimentation, and no surprise at all that the original Planet of the Apes movie comes from that period of time, which is really this sort of psychedelic concept,
Hmm.
and then by the mid 70s, which is admittedly not a very long period of time, but it's like people have become a little bit more jaded, a little bit more sensitive to what we might now call camp. At the time, I don't know if they had that word or not, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
I mean,
like,
they did, but I wonder if they would have called it, they would have called this camp, or
yeah,
it takes time for something to be campified.
right. Like there's probably stuff coming. Like weird to say it this way, but like there's stuff coming out right now that in 20 or 30 years will seem just unbearably dated,
Hmm.
and just it'll just smack of the early 2020s. but like now we're just like, yeah, this is what movies are like. Like what, like there's
Yeah.
no that context isn't available to us because we're not able to put it in a context. It's just what's
Yeah.
happening right now.
I mean,
Um,
if you kind of just step outside the movie, and we've been inundated with these movies over the past few weeks, like this is a war movie about humanity, but all the lead characters are dudes in monkey masks.
uh-huh.
Like it's kind of absurd.
Yeah.
It's kind of absurd that it exists and that it went on for 5 movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I agree. Yeah. It's silly. The whole thing was always kind of silly.
Yes.
I think we
Yes.
used the first movie. I think we used the word surreal in the first movie, where there was an uncanny surreal nature to it,
Mhm.
where it was creepy. Like the idea that Taylor comes across this settlement and it's all apes. Like it was shot to be creepy. The idea of there being these intelligent apes was kind of unsettling and creepy. And you were identified with Taylor's character, where he's totally overwhelmed and terrified. Uh, but by the fifth movie, certainly all of that sense of the uncanniness of the situation has just eroded away, and now it's
Mhm.
just like, yep, another apes movie. It's just an apes movie. It's a normal. It's like you probably don't remember the first time you heard the phrase Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think I do actually. It's an it's the silliest series of words imaginable, right? But but where we are now in our lives, it's just like, yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
It's one word.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, of course, right? Of course,
Yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's so normalized. It's just the weirdness that made that franchise compelling then became a commodity, and the same thing
Yeah.
happened with apes. The same thing really happens with everything to a degree, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me as like this is a very early prototype of what has kind of come to rule our pop culture, which is that like we have to do this kind of sci-fi or fantasy stand-in. Like it's not enough that it's a police procedural. It has to be a police procedural, but also he's Batman. Like
Uh-huh.
it's not enough that it's just like we have to do these things with everything we make now, or we have to. It can't just be the thing. It has to be the thing, but also
Uh-huh.
something else. And like I mean, this is pre Star Wars, right? This is like we talked about Star Trek a lot with this because, but this is like pre huge franchise movies. I mean, this is a big franchise, but it's a big franchise like when did Jaws come out? I think this is all pre Jaws. Yeah, Jaws is 75. So like this
Mhm.
whole franchise exists before the idea of a summer blockbuster even exists in the world.
Mhm.
Um and so it's really interesting looking at this thing as kind of a prototype for where Hollywood is going to go in the years to come. But also being obviously very distinctly 70s in kind of the surrealness of it, the way the movies are shot, the things that they're trying to do with it and trying to say and trying to examine. Um, Ultimately they're like hokey B movies, but like that's not a bad thing in and of itself.
Right. Yeah, I've if anything become less clear on what people mean when they say B movie over time, because people like, I feel like um yeah, these are B movies, I guess, but like they're, if that's the case, then I like B movies, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like what I don't know what people, I don't know what people mean when they use that as a criticism, I suppose.
I mean,
I,
to me it's just like low budget,
uh-huh.
looks cheap.
Yeah, yeah.
Um kind of trying to be like a commercial movie but spending the least amount of time possible. I mean,
I
still
guess,
money possible.
yeah, that's true. I think the first one might not qualify just because that one feels like they really tried to make it a real movie, and then the rest of them do kind of feel like they were trying to save costs. Um, but okay, I'll buy that explanation.
Yeah, yeah. Um I will see. We'll see. I mean, this is the again. This is part of the reason why I wanted to do this project, because like this is the end of this particular era. We're gonna move on to the Burton movie, and then eventually the latest versions of the movies, and see what does it mean when you make a movie where monkeys rule the world,
Uh-huh.
and like how does that reflect on what things we're thinking about in society at the time. Um, I'm really anxious to do the Tim Burton one because I do not particularly like that movie, but I've never looked at it critically, and so I think it's gonna be really interesting going into that, having just done this and having all these movies fresh on our mind to see like, oh, maybe this was like more in line with what those movies were doing than we remember, um, or maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah, I feel like I remember that one pretty vividly. What's funny is I actually liked it when it came out, but I was like 16 or whatever. So
Yeah,
what did I know?
yeah. Well, I mean, it's got Mark Wahlberg in it. There's fighting.
It's Tim
I
Roth.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, the special effects did look pretty good
I think so.
for the time.
Not as good as the later ones, but
No.
um,
Well, I don't were they I don't think Burton did CG with them. I mean, obviously there's CG in the movie, but I think they used makeup.
yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. I'm just looking at pictures, and this definitely looks like costumes and makeup, but it was a lot.
Mm.
It was a lot better, generally speaking.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
and also, like, I feel like they whereas in the newest batch of movies, they're just using CGI, so they make the gorillas actually look like gorillas and the chimps actually look like chimps. These ones, this is kind of the only time where they try to make them actually look like evolved versions of those animals. So like
Mhm.
the chimps have a very chimp-like body and they're like super strong and agile, but they're, taller and more erect. And then the gorillas are still giant and gorilla-like, but they're also not, you know, bipedal creatures. They're
Yeah, but they're
just,
Michael Clark Duncan, so they're
yeah,
scary.
they're Michael Clark Duncan. So they're yeah. Um right. So it's, I like that aspect of it because it's like it's like, what would you do if you took the idea of evolved apes, seriously from a visual
Mhm.
perspective? I think that's the one place where I'll sort of stand the movie, is that Burton took the visual design of this movie seriously, um, and did something kind of original and cool with it. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing we should say before we leave here, though, is that like this was not the end of the Apes franchise in the 70s. There was a short-lived television show called Planet of the Apes, the TV series. I think it ran from 74 uh, to 75. I think there were only like 14 episodes. There was also an animated series called Return to the Planet of the Apes. That ran for also 13 episodes. By the way, Roddy McDowell came back to be a different ape named Galen in the show. So like this man really loves he really loves getting in this ape makeup, I guess.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just now learning that Paul Giamatti is a orangutan in this movie. So
Oh,
I'm
in the Burton one?
in the
Yeah.
Burton
Yeah,
one.
you
So
didn't know
I'm
that? Yeah.
I'm now twice as excited to watch it. So
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk maybe a little bit more about the events that led up to the Burton film in 2001 when we talk about that movie. But I don't know. So 5 movies down, we've got 5 to go. Technically, Matt, how you feeling? How you feeling about Apes?
I enjoyed it. I'm glad we did this. So far, and I think um, I think the later movies, like I'm really looking forward to talking about Rise, which is, I think, just like a really really good movie that I
Yeah.
really enjoy, and I'm excited to talk about it. But these movies were a totally different experience, and I think maybe different even from what I expected, because I don't know, I think they were generally better than I expected them to be. And
Hmm.
now that we're at the end of this run of the first five, um, glad we did that. Had fun talking about these movies with you, and looking forward to the second half of this journey.
Me too. Me too. Awesome. All right. So that is the end of the 70s Planet of the Apes movies. As Matt said, we will be covering Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes the 2001 film. I think we maybe are going to take like a brief break from Apes, so next week we won't be doing the Burton film, but we'll get back to that soon.
Doof.
Before we go though, Matt, I wanted to talk about the box office a little bit. So summer has come and gone. What is your vibe as a person who doesn't necessarily follow this, but is probably like picking up on cultural osmosis on how do you think the 2024 box office did?
I'm going to try to quickly, in a Mentat-like fashion, assimilate all the information that I know.
Okay.
I'm imagining it is just sort of getting, ever since COVID, the box office has gotten a little bit better every year. That is my theory.
That is accurate.
Okay.
Except this year is down from last year.
Oh, so no.
Yeah. So the box office in 2023 in the summer earned about $4 billion. The cumulative gross for 2024 is at 3.5. So it's about $500 million less. But that's less than I think everyone was afraid of, because the mantra in Hollywood this year has been survive until 25, which is like, if we can just avoid going out of business until 2025 and all the movies come. Because basically, Matt, what 2024 was there was a big strike for half the year last year, and so a lot of movies that were supposed to come out this year did not come out this year. There was a lot of movies pushed off to 25, and we got a lot of the kind of, I'll call them the dregs. It's not necessarily true, but like, there was just not as much this summer. But despite that, things went pretty good overall. I know you know this already because we were talking about this before we hit record, but I'll play the game with you. Matt, do you know the number one film of the summer?
I have absolutely no idea. Why don't you tell me?
Well, if you guess Deadpool and Wolverine, you would be wrong.
What?
The number one movie of the summer was Disney Pixar's Inside Out 2, which has grossed up until this point $1.65 billion, making it one of the most successful movies of all time, the most successful animated picture ever, and it doubled the gross of the first movie. And I feel like no one's talking about this. That's the thing I feel, is that like no one's talking about how huge this movie was.
Yeah, I didn't know this until you told me just now. But yeah, that's incredible. It's incredible, really sort of incredible news for, I think, Pixar and even just like the whole idea of like high concept, weird art for children, which I always feel like there should be more of. And in fact, this is me getting on a bit of a hobby horse, I guess, but like this happens over and over where somebody will make a weird, compelling, high concept thing aimed at children, and it'll do incredibly, incredibly well and be beloved. And then everyone's like, oh, well, clearly the thing that people liked about that was the goofy bear character. Let's just use that for everything. And it's like, no, they loved that it was weird. People like weird shit. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and it sounds like Inside Out 2. I haven't actually seen Inside Out 2, much to my everlasting shame, but
me neither.
It seems from what I've heard, like it's also just like quite a good experience of a movie, not really doing the just like cashing on the concept of Inside Out. And I don't think Pixar ever really cashes in. I think Pixar makes they do make multiple movies in a franchise, but I think they try to say different things and have different points for their franchise movies.
I agree, and I also haven't seen Inside Out 2. There is part of me that my heart is a little broken at this though, because like I just feel like the result of this is going to be, I think Disney and Pixar's relationship has essentially been one for me, one for you. Is like, you give me the surefire hit sequel, and we'll let you make an original film. And I just feel like when this movie is the most successful animated film ever, it's going to be 2 for me, 1 for you. Like, you're gonna have to keep, like, the Disney D23 weekend happened, and they announced like Toy Story 5, Cars 4. Like, they're just gonna be pumping these things out, man. And like, while that is, I think this movie is a testament to the fact that that is not necessarily a bad thing artistically. You can still make a good movie out of a sequel, an interesting movie that's doing something. I do like the originals, and like Elemental from last year was a movie that we both liked. I think it's fair to say, right?
Yeah,
Um, Ended up having legs, ended up doing okay in the end, but just opened abysmally. Like it just makes it seem like that they're less likely to do things like that. Like you wonder, like in this world now, would the original Inside Out have even gotten the opportunity to be made?
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know. It makes me hopeful. The idea that
Yeah,
it is Inside Out too, right? It's not.
yeah,
This isn't to take a specific dig against Cars, but it's like this isn't Cars 6. Like it's not just like, oh, it's just another one of the standard Pixar things. It's like, no, it's the weird one. Inside Out is
yeah,
a weird, again, I'm going to use the word again, high concept, like cerebral movie that is in some ways kind of challenging. Like it's almost surprising that children like Inside Out, which they do,
yeah.
by the way. But like you
Hmm.
watch it and you're like, can you even follow what's happening? Because this is very esoteric. But no, children do love it. Adults love it. Um, it's so it makes me happy that it's specifically that it's Inside Out that's doing so well.
I guess uh I didn't predict that Inside Out was like a cultural touchstone of a certain generation, like the way Finding Nemo was. Like but I think it must have been, right? Because I
Yeah.
think the success of this movie is that people really really liked Inside Out when it came out, and now they're taking their children to see Inside Out too. And I also think it does, like with the anxiety emotion, I think it captures something amongst the youths and their um the world is terrible, doom scrolling, anxiety, like loving stuff. Like, and I feel like
Yeah.
that's just very popular amongst the youths, and it just slots very perfectly into that. I really need to see this movie. I really really want to. Like the first Inside Out, like I called Pixar's masterpiece. I like one of my favorite movies ever, definitely my favorite Pixar movie. So like I'm actually mad at myself for not having seen this yet.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, um no good excuse. But let's watch it. Let's watch it.
Yeah, we should watch it. Maybe we should talk about it. I think it does just strike me as weird, Matt, that like this movie made 200 million more dollars than Barbie, and Barbie was like that was a cultural
Uh-huh.
movement last year, right? Like the Barbenheimer and like so Barbenheimer combined made more money than this, obviously, but still, like that, like Barbie's success was like, oh my god, like whoa, movies are back, like look at this, and it's like no, this movie's just kind of quietly like raking in the dough.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of that. Like maybe I've just become unplugged from the cultural conversation, but it just doesn't seem like anyone's talking about this at all.
That could be it. I mean, but I think part of it is just like the Barbenheimer thing was a really unusual circumstance where you've got two movies that are kind of like about the current moment, and
Hmm.
everyone has so much to say, and it means it's so important that Barbie, and it's so vital that Oppenheimer, and you have to see these movies to be part of the conversation. And then ultimately, um Inside Out 2 is probably just a better movie than
Sure.
potentially both of those movies. Not going to go that far because Oppenheimer won Best Picture and is a
Hmm.
brilliant masterwork. But also it's a different audience. Like for all the fact that Barbie was a movie that could be enjoyed by children, and my kids did enjoy Barbie, it's not really aimed at children. It's very tongue in cheek. It's very ironic.
Yeah.
Whereas Inside Out 2 is a movie that's going to be made with children in mind, for children.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if anything, it's made for children, but adults can also appreciate it rather than the other way around. So
No, you're right.
um,
You're right. I think that's true. I think maybe like kids movies just impact cultural conversation less overall.
yeah.
It's kind of like they always do pretty well, but they don't they're not really talked about. Cuz like the Garfield movie, Matt, the
Uh-huh.
Garfield movie made $230 million.
Did not know
What?
that.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I guess movies are back. Wow.
I think the really interesting thing about the box office when you look at everything is that May comes around and everything in May is tanking. Like the first movie of the summer was The Fall Guy, that stunt movie
Uh-huh.
with Ryan Gosling in it, which tanked
Uh-huh.
180 million worldwide. Sounds like a lot, but they spent like 120 million on it, so not great. And then the If movie comes out, that John Krasinski. Uh, I watched that movie on streaming, by the way. It's not good at all.
Okay.
That movie comes out, it tanks. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes comes out, a movie we'll be watching here in a few weeks. It doesn't do very well, although I think it ended up doing okay. It made like just under 400 million worldwide, but I don't think it did like gangbusters. Um, so like everyone's like, and then Furiosa comes out, and Furiosa absolutely tanks, which is really sad. That movie only made 172 million worldwide. I feel bad because I didn't see it, and I probably should have to help a movie that I'm sure I'm going to love. But no good, not good. But
Yeah.
then after May, like everything turned around. Everything turned around, and all movies started to not only do well but like overperform, with the exception of poor for Horizon and American Saga, poor Kevin Costner and his own money he sunk into that. Like every movie in June and July, like overperformed what it was supposed to do. Like Twisters did very well. Despicable Me did very well. The Bad Boys movie, the fourth Bad Boys film, made 400 million worldwide, which no one thought that was coming. This proves, by the way, that normal people don't actually care that Will Smith smacked a person on the face on national television.
Uh-huh.
They don't care at all. If they did care, they cared for roughly 30 seconds and then they got over it. And it's only us professionally online people that are actually still thinking about this at all.
It makes sense. Yeah. I don't know. So I guess I don't know what to say here, because here is where I would hope that I had some theory and say, well, here's why people have returned to the movie theaters. But I don't have any idea,
Yeah.
because I don't know what's different than last year.
I mean, not much other than like perhaps there's less movies overall, so the movies that are coming out that are good are overperforming. I mean, there's things like there is stuff to look at here trend wise. Obviously, like if you look at the top 10 films of the summer, the first one that is not a sequel is number 8 on the list. It Ends with Us, which is an adaptation of a very, very popular romance novel that like absolutely exploded. It's a film that came out in August and is still on the list, which doesn't normally happen, right? Like, and tail end of the summer movies don't have as much time to rank up money. So August movies usually aren't in the top 10, but this movie is. It came out 2 weeks ago and it's in the top 10 of the summer. Just because like this book is like the authors of these books, like I think she's selling more copies than the Bible right now. So she's absolutely huge. And so they made an adaptation, not without controversy, apparently. I haven't seen it, but that's like the number 8 is original. Number 9 is If, that's original. Number 10, The Fall Guy, is original. But so 1 through 7 are all sequels and or prequels, I guess. And that, I mean, that's not unusual, right? That's kind of the way the game has been played for a very, very long time now.
Yeah, it's just built into the way marketing works. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the same is true with books now.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know. I've gotten past having emotions about it, because I think, it's on one level it's annoying. It's like, really, but then you're just like, okay, well, people have got to make money, so
Yeah.
try to see the new things, the truly new things, and then
Yeah.
if those do reasonably well, then maybe they can spawn their own franchise.
Yay! I do think like talking about the existence of art within all this, though, like there just because these movies are sequels or prequels or whatever doesn't mean they're not good. Like we already talked about Inside Out. I know Deadpool and Wolverine, the number 2 film, is a one that I think you were pretty mixed on, but had some good things to say about it. I actually watched the number 7 film, A Quiet Place, day one, which got 261 million worldwide. This is the third movie in the Quiet Place franchise. There was the first movie, and then a direct sequel, and then this is a prequel. And this movie's really good, Matt. Like I couldn't believe it. I rolled my eyes at the concept of this movie when I first heard about it. But this is a film about a woman who is a terminal cancer patient. She is in hospice when sound aliens crash land in New York City, and
Love that sentence.
And essentially it is a movie about her like literally just wanting to go to Harlem to get pizza from a pizza place that her father took her when she was a little girl. Um, and that's like she wants to just go get pizza before she dies because she's about to die, not to sound aliens, Matt, but just to the terminal cancer she has. And it becomes this like incredibly touching, intimate character story between her and this other man she meets on the journey, um, existing in this franchise movie. And like that's when you see stuff like that, it gives me hope a little bit. It's like, yeah, we made the joke about like, but also it's Batman a little bit earlier, and
Yeah.
it's just like this is the game you kind of have to play in the world now. And it's like if you have a story to tell, find a way to hide your story in something else. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is that way. And so we have to look for the stories that are allowed to exist within this whole thing. And A Quiet Place Day One is surprisingly to me a story that like it does a very, very good job in a concept that I thought was like creatively dead on arrival.
Uh-huh.
But no, it's good. I really liked it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I like genre stuff just
Mhm.
like a child. So I'm open. I'm pretty open minded to the idea of let's take some weird sci-fi idea but it's actually going to be about humanity, and that's fine.
Yeah, I am too. I think I would just want it to exist in a world where also we can just tell a straight up story about
Yeah.
like a cancer patient, and we don't like
Yeah.
like I think a world should exist in which both of those stories get to exist.
Yeah. So we were just talking the other day about the movie Philadelphia, which
Mhm.
I don't remember exactly why that like went back onto my radar, but I was thinking about Philadelphia and how it's just a movie where like there's like 100 different reasons why no one would make that movie again today.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, it wouldn't be like just at every level. It's just like the the way the script is written, the way the story is designed,
Yeah.
the way it's even filmed, like the pacing. There's just not like movies don't work that way anymore. And I'm like, yeah. So does that mean like Philadelphia, but it's on a space station? You know, like that's I, I'm I'm genuinely like how like if you wanted to tell that story and hit those emotional beats, how would you do it nowadays? Because I don't think the answer is, oh, you can't anymore. I think it's just like, yeah, you've got to find the right. It's all about marketing, really. Like you got to
Yeah.
find the right marketing package for it, and then you work backwards from that, sort of, or you meet halfway, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's encouraging. I think the movie industry isn't gonna die this week, so that's good.
Yeah.
We've got we. It seems like we're gonna survive till 25. Although I will tell you, I don't. I, I don't know how the rest of the year's gonna look. We'll see. It could end up being that summer was lower than last year, but ended up being okay, and then the rest of the year is just dire. We'll see. I mean, I think the fun thing is like we did our Oscars catch up series at the beginning of this year, and a lot of those movies are things that weren't even on my radar at this point in the year. So like the fun part of this is always the films that surprise you in
Yeah.
this. So I mean, there's movies being made every day. There's plenty of opportunity for art to still exist within this system, and it's exciting. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. You never know.
But summer's over.
Yep.
What do you think any of this top 10 is going to be nominated for an Academy Award? Is there any? Do you think? I mean, Inside Out probably will get the animated feature nod, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's the first one that jumped to mind. I mean, maybe some
Mhm.
special effects awards here and there. Like I
Yeah, I
haven't.
don't. Who cares about the below the
Right.
line stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally, man. No,
Yeah.
I mean, off the top of my head, it's like, no, I don't. I haven't seen these movies, so I can't really say. But it doesn't.
Mhm.
Nothing you've said about them sounds like super
Yeah.
compelling. Yeah, yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how well Dune does in Dune 2 in the Oscars. I think it could do very well.
My feeling is it's gonna do really well, but probably not as well as I want.
Well, I think the interesting thing about it is going to be because sometimes the Academy does this thing where they wait until the last movie to really go apeshit with the awards. Like they did that with Lord of the Rings, right? They knew Lord of the Rings was going to be a trilogy. They waited until Return of the King, and then they just threw all the awards at it. So um, there is a third Dune film coming. I don't. It's going to be weird as shit, man. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes there.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good point. I kind of hope they don't do that because I don't know that the third Dune movie is going to be nearly as commercially successful as the first two, because the first two as a unit form a kind of traditional narrative
Yeah.
like package that's really enjoyable, whereas this third one, I don't know exactly what he's going to do, but I do know that it is not a traditional narrative package. um
How is he going to make it one? Like you figure he's going to be getting a lot of pressure from the studios to be like, okay, but d- do you know who our target audience is?
yeah, I don't know. I don't want to start saying a bunch of spoilers, I guess, but
Sure.
I have an idea of the shape of the thing that he might go for.
Hmm.
Actually, like but but I don't know this. Even so, I don't know if it's going to be super commercially successful because it's not. It's not the kind of crowd pleaser. There's no way to make it in the kind of crowd pleaser that the second movie was, for example. So,
How do they get Zendaya into it? They need to find a way.
I mean, it's pretty important that she be in this story in a big way. So,
Yeah, but I feel like the way they changed it at the end of Dune 2, they're going to have to do some work, right?
they are going to have to do some work, but I don't know like that if they spend a lot of time, if they spend a lot of screen time on undoing what they did with that, that's kind of weird because
Hmm.
it's like, well, you just did that to yourselves, and now we're just back to where we were anyway. um
Sure.
I feel like he must have some notion of where he wants to go with this that has
Oh,
been
yeah.
consistent the whole time, because I think he I think he wanted to make the third movie the whole time. I don't know
Yeah.
if he
Oh,
thought he was going to get to, but
almost certainly. Yeah.
yeah.
And because these two have been pretty successful, I think they will give him a little bit more of a leeway than maybe they would have before. So we'll see.
I can kind of see how we might. I know I'm being like ultimately vague here, but I think there's certain things that they could do that will, using the story that is already there, will just pull her back into the story organically rather than having her just be there the whole time. That's
Yeah, that's fair.
possible. Yeah.
How you feeling about Joker Folie à Deux? You excited about that?
You know, I'm not, but I kind of admire what they're doing. Like this, I'm not just like, oh yeah, it's gonna be shit. I'm actually just
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
I don't. I think it's just not my thing. But
Sure.
I think it's cool. It's weird. I love Joaquin. I kind of just trust him. Um. So yeah, I don't know. What do you feel about that one?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't love the first movie, but like, I didn't also like hate it. I just remember the freaking dialogue around that movie just actually probably actively made me dislike it more than I
Yeah,
should have. Um, but I don't know. It looks like it could be interesting. We'll see.
we'll see.
Are you excited for Beetlejuice? Beetlejuice
A little bit.
comes out in next week, I
I'm
think. Yeah.
actually slightly, because I saw a trailer for it. I had no idea it existed, and then I saw a trailer for it when I went to see Deadpool, and
Hmm.
like at least as a trailer, it is a good trailer for a comedy where there's just a lot of jokes in the trailer, and that
Mhm.
kind of makes you feel like, well, there must be at least this many jokes in the movie. And it's Michael Keaton really seems to be like excited to be Beetlejuice.
Yeah, he's
So
going for it, man. He really is.
yeah,
I think this movie is going to be hugely successful, and I like. I mean, I liked the first Beetlejuice movie, but I really have like no emotional attachment to it to the point where I'm like, I'm really jazzed about this. I'll probably see it eventually. I'm fine, but I think like it. I feel like this is really like a touchstone for a lot of people, um,
yeah,
for one reason or another, and I do really think this is going to make a shit ton of money. I really do.
yeah. I think you're right. I agree.
Um,
There's a lot of people. I think Beetlejuice is now like the retro thing for a lot of young people too.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like retro cool in addition to being just like actually nostalgically cool for people our
Mhm.
age.
Yeah.
So
Did we ever talk about the Megalopolis trailer on the podcast?
I don't think so.
That saga. I know I like briefly mentioned it to you, but just I think this will wrap up on this. But for those that don't know, Megalopolis is the new Francis Ford Coppola movie that is coming out, I believe, in November of this year. It is like a long, long, long gestating project for him. He spent over $100 million of his own money. He like sold his winery to be able to fund this movie, and all the reports from the film festivals that this movie has played at has basically said it's unwatchable. It's like just really, really bad. Um, and so they released a trailer for it, and in the trailer they had quotes from critics of Francis Ford Coppola's earlier films. Like, so basically they took very famous critics like Pauline Kael and Roger Ebert for films like Godfather and Apocalypse Now. And basically the argument they were trying to make there was it was like people have never appreciated Francis Ford Coppola in the moment, so don't listen to what people are saying about this movie. This will be a classic just like those movies were. Which, like, by the way, is a really good idea for a
Mhm.
marketing plan. Like if you're sitting there with a movie that is just getting absolutely ravaged by the press,
Yeah.
how do you market it to people? That's a clever way to do it. There was one problem with it. Um, the quotes they were using weren't real,
Uh-huh.
or just from a real critic, but for a different. The quotes were either made up whole cloth or they were said by the critic, but about a different movie. And so basically 6 hours after the trailer came out, some reporters figured this out. They had to pull the trailer and apologize and say that the firm that they hired to put all this together was fired from doing it for them. It's just like, I feel bad for Coppola because that's not his fault at all,
Yeah.
and it's just another stain on this movie. Well, I like honestly, it gets me even more curious to see it because like when you tell me a movie is a disaster, like I
Yeah.
kind of want to see it more.
You tell me something that stars Adam Driver and
Hmm.
Lawrence Fishburne and Jason Schwartzman is unwatchable. I'm like, that sounds like a dare.
And Dustin Hoffman,
Dustin
Aubrey
Hoffman.
Plaza, Shia LaBeouf, Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, this cast is stacked. Like how can this be bad? It can't be. I
Yeah.
refuse.
Or a little, at least be interesting. At least be
Yeah, yeah.
something compellingly. There's a reason why he wanted to spend $100 million on it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we'll probably have to see that movie and have a conversation about it at some point. But
Yeah.
I feel so bad that was it was funny like watching it as it happened because like I remember watching the trailer and seeing those quotes and be like, oh, that's a clever idea. And then like 10 minutes later, I saw a tweet that was like, Pauline Kael didn't say that. And
That,
then it just kind of spiraled from there.
that's
Oh man,
crazy.
what a fuck up.
Yep.
Okay. All right. That's going to do it for us this week, I think, Matt. That was a
Sounds good.
good episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have any opinions on the Planet of the Apes 70 series at all, or on specifically Battle for the Planet of the Apes, or what are your thoughts on Inside Out 2, where we haven't spoken with anyone that's seen that movie, Matt. So I don't actually know. I haven't actually talked to a real person about if that movie was good or not. So let us know what you thought of Inside Out 2 or any of the other summer blockbuster films. You can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or on Twitter @doofmedia.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, please consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/Doof Media and pledge at any of the available levels for a whole bunch of bonus content, including the ability to vote in our monthly book club, which, by the way, tomorrow, or today as you're listening to it, the 30th of October, the 30th of August, at 9:30 p.m. Central Time is our monthly book club. We will be live over on our YouTube channel chatting about Paul Tremblay's horror movie, a book that just came out this year. So if you want to hang out and talk about that book for an hour or so with us, you should check that out.
Yeah. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts or any other podcatcher. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, we will see you all next week. We're not sure exactly what we're going to cover yet. I think we're going to take a little break from Apes before we move into the 21st century films, but it'll be an episode and it'll be good. The end.
The end.
We'll see you next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.